Hello, true believers. Hi. It's me and Leigh. Say hi, Leigh.
We're the only hi, Leigh. We're the only anime nerds here, Tony.
Yeah, and I have to admit I'm not even really an anime nerd. There's a few animes that I like.
I'm the only anime nerd here, Tony.
Yeah, I think I don't watch enough to be considered an anime nerd, but there are some I really enjoy, such as One Punch Man and Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that.
The classics.
Yeah, the classics, for me.
Did you see the Witcher anime?
Oh yeah, really
Yeah,
cool.
that was good. And
that's usually where my anime interest lies, is in the crossover with stuff that I already like.
Right.
Which brings us to our topic today. Cyberpunk Edgerunners, the anime that came out on Netflix last week.
It's so good.
Oh man, is it ever good.
All right, that's the show. Thanks for tuning in,
That's
everybody.
all you do. Just go watch it. That's it.
Well, okay. Maybe don't go watch it, because we have to give you some caveats. We'll give you like the general feeling we have about Cyberpunk Edgerunners, and then we'll get into some spoilers, but we'll clearly demarcate those so that you don't spoil the whole thing for you. But boy, oh boy, I didn't realize how a candy neon saturated look would make what is typically a noir genre look so amazing.
So I've been banging that drum ever since the game came out. Almost 2 years ago. And
what, that it was too dark, or that it...
No, that it just looked freaking awesome with the noir style and the bright neons and the bright colors. And it's one of the most beautiful games you'll ever play.
Agreed. It's very pretty.
And, warts and all, it's one of my favorite games to have come out over the last couple years.
Well, and I can honestly say, having picked it up last week, the warts are pretty much gone. So
that's the thing. They have pumped a lot of time into fixing the bugs and ironing out quality of life improvements and things like that. So if you ever had any interest in trying out this game, now's the time to do it. And you can usually find it on sale at any given time for $30 to $40.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, they definitely took advantage. I know Steam took advantage of Edgerunners coming out and put it on sale for $30. And for somebody like me who's, several hundred hours into Skyrim, I have the same problem with Edgerunners, is that, I'm definitely going to be doing every side quest there is, because I want to be in that world as much as possible, because it's neat.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to live there, but I'll go visit. I'll go play there.
Exactly. And before we jump into the anime, it's been interesting to see. There's been several articles written over the last week about how the game popularity has jumped up to the highest it's been since the first week it came out, because of how good the anime is, and people look at it and go, wait a minute, I want more of that. And it's based on this game, which is based in the world of Cyberpunk by Mike Pondsmith.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like Blade Runner, if you like like Running Man or other cyberpunk style stuff, this is right up your alley.
It's kind of quaint. I mean, you remember the old Conan O'Brien skit where they do the in the year 2000 bit?
Yeah, in the year 2000.
So it's kind of the same with Cyberpunk. Like when they were first putting it together, you think about like Blade Runner in 1983, and 2019 seemed like an impossibility. It was the height of the Cold War. We were pretty sure, like we were still doing duck and cover drills in schools and stuff. There wasn't much hope of a future. So a dystopian, hyper corporatocracy type future, like you see in Blade Runner, was something that people said, well, if we make it, that's probably what we're going to see. And so 2019, we'll have the flying cars, we'll have the billboards the size of buildings, we'll have replicants, because you look at the 40 years prior to that, the leaps in technology had been huge. But our leaps in technology since 1983, in the last 40 years, they've been massive, but they've been more internal.
Different directions. Like nobody could have ever believed in 1983 that I would have a computer in my pocket that could get me access to basically every bit of knowledge on the earth within seconds. Yeah,
you're not seeing cell phones in Blade Runner, but you're seeing flying cars and replicants, right? So it's like some of the things, Star Trek got it, but some other things weren't quite sure. So now we have the Cyberpunk tabletop game. Their first one was Cyberpunk 2013 because they were like, yeah, we're going to have all this stuff going on. And then Cyberpunk 2020. And then what? You've got Cyberpunk Red takes place in like 2040, 2044 when Night City was bombed by terrorists.
Oh, man.
And, and then you've got Cyberpunk 2077, which takes place fairly late. When's Edgerunners take place?
Edgerunners is in around 2077 because there is a character that you see in the series, and we'll get to that spoilers later. I'll tell you what character you see as a crossover, but he's in the game too. So you're talking within a couple years for sure.
Right. So we get the story is David, and he's a good kid. He's like a straight A student, but he's got a major problem.
Yep.
He was born poor.
Yep. And in a world of cyberpunk, classism is alive and well, and almost to the point where it's worse than it's been in at least the U.S. for a long time. And it's almost like, I would say the lines are delineated almost like a caste system in India back in the day, things like that.
It's still there, Tony.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, I don't live in India, so I don't know exactly how that goes. But if you're poor, like there's two ways to get rich if you're poor, and it's basically a life of crime or the ever so often luck of the lottery or something like that.
Right.
But that's it.
And that's literally what lotteries are for. The lottery isn't there for anybody's, there's no largesse there. It's all about getting people's money and people hoping. So a little background on this world, though, is that these giant city-states like Night City, there's a couple others, there's not much in between. Like most of the United States has been pretty much ravaged, hasn't it?
Yes, yeah. And Night City is in California. And it's basically LA if LA were to have continued to grow out and up.
It looks and feels like LA for sure.
Yeah.
Having lived there a good chunk of my life. So, David's life, it's not like he can just like pack up and leave the city. He's got to do right by his mom, who's been working 52 jobs at the same time to try to get him through this prep school so that he can climb the corporate ranks of Arasaka, which I love that Arasaka is one of the carryovers that you first become aware of with this show from the game and from the tabletop games world too, Nice.
So Arasaka's a carryover. Is Militech a carryover?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep, Militech, and you got...
I just had my first Militech upgrade in 2077.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yep. So there's quite a few.
It's all just megacorps basically run everything. And, I think they talk about this a little bit in like Judge Dredd. That's a very cyberpunk style as well. You have the megacorps and things like that.
Everybody read a little William Gibson in the early 80s and said,
Neuromancer or Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash, same kind of thing, which I loved those books. They were fascinating to me. But once again, I wouldn't want to live there, just like you said.
And we may not have much choice in the matter, unfortunately, because you play the Cyberpunk games, you watch the show, and you see some things, even going back to Blade Runner, basically has glaring warnings against corporatocracy and, that candy gloss, once it wears off, there's a huge cost of individual liberties and freedoms. There's a huge cost of just decent humanity seems to go away. So I look at this as like a parallel to Mad Max in many ways. Like this world can exist alongside Mad Max easily because that's what's going on outside the megacities.
Yeah. Mad Max is what's going on, down in Australia or in the Midwest of the U.S. And this is what's going on behind the big city walls.
Well, and you heard the story of how George Miller came up with Mad Max, didn't you? Mm-mm. He's a trauma doctor. The guy's like a surgeon, right?
Okay.
He's a very gifted surgeon. And in the 70s, they were getting these racing gangs that were going out and just killing each other out on the back highways, out in the outback of Australia. So as a trauma doctor, these people would show up in his ER and they're just beat to hell with motorcycles wrapped around their bodies and whatever else. And he's just like, why are you doing this? It's like, well, it's fun. Or its territory, or there's no future anyway, we're all going to get nuked. So that's George Miller coming up with his own dystopia future.
Yeah.
And then playing 2077, I started out as a nomad, which is basically outside Night City, basically Fallout, right?
Yeah.
It's what it basically felt like.
Yeah, so you can start that game as, and I know we're deviating quite a bit from the anime stuff, but it's all tied together.
How can we not? Yeah.
I know, it's all tied together. So you can start as a nomad. You can start as a corpo kid, which is someone who has started to work his way up in a mega corporation and then decides they don't want to do that anymore. Or you can start as, and this was the first one I did, was a street kid, basically the same as David in the anime.
Right.
Someone who was born and raised in Night City and is just basically gotten to the point where they decided life of crime or something along those lines is the only option I have, and I'm going to make a name for myself.
Well, and it's interesting too. And I hate to draw real world parallels, but I'm going to. So I have some friends who are from what would be considered the upper crust of our local society here, and their kids go to private schools. And you know what those kids are learning? Yeah, they're learning the same things that our kids learn in regular public school. They're learning social networking with other well-to-do people. They're learning, they're going to cotillions where they meet people that they can date and perhaps marry when they get older, because they want to keep the wealthy wealthy. They don't want the Davids of the world marrying into those levels of society, right?
Right.
And that's what you see here with David's mom. She's like a ER nurse or something? And
She's I think an ER nurse, or I think she might be an assistant to the trauma team that goes out in the field with the ambulance.
But the trauma team is like, they're a combat team, and insurance is something that you pay through the nose for, and depending on how good your insurance is, depends on the kind of care, which we get into brutally in the first episode, because David's not doing well in school. He's being picked on by the rich kids, and he gets in a fight with one of them, and of course it's his fault as far as the school's concerned.
Yeah.
And so he and mom are driving around. They get in an accident because of gangs basically fighting with each other in the street. And things don't go well for mom, not because she couldn't be saved, but because her insurance didn't cover it.
Yep.
And
it literally shows a scene with the paramedic standing over her body saying, "Oh, she's not up to date on her payments, leave her."
Yep.
And then he sees trapped in the car still that happen, and crawls out from the wreckage. They do end up getting her to the hospital, and it looks like, at least for a minute, that she's going to be okay. She takes a turn for the worse that night and passes away.
Yep. And they could have done something, but she didn't have the coverage. And then you see later on in the series, there's a corpo who has really good insurance, and you see the type of paramedics they send after him.
Yeah.
It's like SEAL Team 6 with defibrillators.
Exactly. Yeah. They get him on the stretcher and run him back, and I mean, it's like just, they call it, I think, platinum level. And
it's the corporal level.
So it's what you would expect.
David, from that point, and this is where we'll start getting into spoilers, David at that point's like, oh, my life's over, things are terrible. And he finds a piece of chrome, which is cybernetic hardware, in the apartment, because it turns out mom had a side hustle where she was providing hot cybernetic tech to the underworld from people that she dealt with as an EMT. So
anyone that died that had some cool cybernetics, she would discreetly remove those and sell it on the black market.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things you see in this episode 2 is a cyber psycho, and that
guy with cyber psychosis.
A theme throughout the entire season, throughout the 10 episodes, and in the game as well. There are these people that have augmented themselves so much with Chrome, with different cybernetic implants, that their minds can't take the strain of that much computer hardware and mechanical hardware on their body.
It's just too much for them. Yeah. Well, it's that whole, at what point can you cut away how much of your humanity before you lose your humanity, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what was the Chrome that he got?
It was called like the Sandmarian.
They called it the Sandy, the Sandus Evra or something like that. Yeah. whatever.
Basically, it's a spinal implant that goes all the way down his back, and it turns him into Quicksilver in small bursts, basically.
In small bursts. And it's cool because you don't actually see anybody else's perspective of it. They show it from the first Cyber Psycho's perspective, where it's like you get the stuttered image of the guy wrapping around people. Looks so cool.
Yes, I thought it looked really awesome how they portrayed that.
And it's not like until 3 or 4 episodes in when you realize it's the trauma doc, or the Ripper doc freaks out because David's able to activate the Sandy like 9-12 times, right?
Yeah,
and they're like,
in
you
a
should be
day.
able to do it more than twice.
Yeah.
So you don't see it until like 3 episodes in when you see the perspective from somebody else, where it's like he just disappears and things start exploding.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, he's moving Quicksilver speeds. He's super fast for 5 to 10 seconds roughly.
But it messes you up something fierce.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So he gets in with a gang basically because they come looking for that piece of tech.
Yeah.
And he's already got it installed in him.
He gets set up by basically your cyber pixie dream girl, Lucy.
Yep.
And Lucy's just like, she seems like she needs saving, and boy, David sure wants to save her, but now she's actually got a gang, and they want their Sandy back.
Yep. Exactly.
And I wanted to hate that dude, the leader of the gang. I can't remember his name.
Maine. Yes,
Maine.
and I felt the same way, but by the end of his story arc, I was just like, oh man, I feel bad for this guy.
So he had Maine, and then he had his girlfriend, who was like this, almost like an augmented Hulk of a woman, and she was awesome.
So in the game, you have the different kind of directions that people take their augmentations, and they have different names for them. If I remember correctly, the people that just go straight like bionic strength are called animals, I think. And then you have the ones that go just pure like gun hardware, and you see some of those I think in the 3rd or 4th episode when they're the ones that don't have like the top half of their face.
Right.
It's pure like embedded red camera vision stuff like
Targeting
that.
software. And
Targeting
all that stuff.
software, exactly. Yeah. And then you have your net runners, which are the more lithe-looking ones like Lucy that have a more subtle cybernetic look.
The one thing they didn't show too much of, and I'm really glad because I wanted nothing but that, were the street samurai. Like they had the samurai on the motorcycles, and I was losing my mind when they had them. They were like on these, they're souped up Japanese speed bikes, and they're wearing these Oni masks and screaming like crazy. And I was like, yes, please, more. And they just gave me enough of it to get the hooks in, and now like I just eat, drink, and breathe Cyberpunk now, and it's this show's fault because it's so good.
Just a little taste. Here's a little taste to get you started. The first
there's another dude, Rebecca's older brother. I can't remember his name, but he's a skis ball. He's sleazy.
I hated that character.
He's terrible, and it's like they use him just enough to make him funny. Because everybody knows this guy. He's like that party douchebag that will not stop. And then he goes out gloriously to a cyber psycho, and it's like, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. That scene was so great because he was just the skeeziest, and I don't know what it is about the way they drew his proportions and stuff, but it just bothered me to look at as well.
Yeah.
How long his arms were and how big his hands were and everything.
Well, and he had the cybernetic hands. Like he was just everything about him. He was a groper. He was gross, and we all knew this dude in high school.
Yeah, exactly.
We all did. We all knew that guy that was like, hey, I'm going to get really long cybernetic fingers when that happens so I can feel people's boobs from 10 feet away.
Yeah.
That dude, you all know him.
Yep.
He might be your cousin, he could be your brother, he could be the guy that hung out with people you didn't like in school, but you all know this guy.
Yep. And so when that was the second introduction to cyberpsychosis that we got was when he got killed.
Yeah.
And then that becomes kind of a running storyline throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah, because David wants to be, and this is a running line not only in this anime, it's a running line in the tabletop RPG, and it's a running line in Cyberpunk 2077. is that everybody wants to make their story because your life is cheap. So the only way to make your life worth it is to leave a story behind. And so that's going on constantly. Like Maine knows that David has that hunger to be famous and to be the person they tell stories to. And the whole time, Maine's telling him, you got to slow down. And then they keep showing David at the Ripper Dock getting more augments and more augments. And he's just a puny kid. And by like episode 6, he's huge.
Yeah. He's like huge. And he has, by the end of the series, all that's left of him is basically his torso and half of his head.
Right.
The rest of him is pure cybernetics.
Well, and it's because of a heist that went horribly wrong.
So yes, however, when he goes into the what they call it, the skeleton, the cyber skeleton, at the end, it shows him basically it takes his legs and his arms off, and they're just like they unhook, like
right,
and they just take all of everything down to his belly button, basically, belly button to neck. And no arms. That was the only meat left on his body, and that's not even including whatever was inside, because they do cybernetic hearts. He got cybernetic lungs. You saw that happen in the third or fourth episode. Because he wanted to keep up with
Lucy. Because she was constantly running and training. They do a couple of other interesting things. Now, Studio Trigger did the animation for this, and if you've seen Kill la Kill or Gurren Lagann, you've seen Studio Trigger's animation. They do some of the best animation out there. They did a little bit of work on what's that Netflix series that you like with the animation?
Love, Death, and Robots.
Yeah, they've done a couple segments on that as well. So, I mean, they're just a fantastic animation company. And with this, I don't know if it's the director or if it's Trigger themselves that decided that an interesting thing happens with the way that David perceives the world as his augmentation goes on. Like Lucy ends up becoming like almost more of an object to him as he gets more and more augmentation until he remembers what it is that Lucy is to him, right? But the way they showed the cyber hacking too, I just love. Like they're just submerged in ice so their bodies don't go into shock. Just so cool.
They got the cables coming out of the back of their neck and all the way down their spine, and then they just float in an ice bathtub.
Yeah.
And they go under into the cyberverse, basically, and start snooping around for stuff they can hack into.
Yeah. There's some really good things. There's a theme throughout this whole thing where Maine's telling him not to trust anybody. And, of course, David ends up trusting everybody. And that doesn't go too well for him.
No, that ends poorly.
Who was the character that ends up betraying them all? I mean, again, we are going... Kiwi. Kiwi was amazing. Such a cool character.
Yeah. She was basically their dedicated net runner.
Mm-hmm.
And then so Giancarlo Esposito is a voice in this, and he's Giancarlo Esposito, so he's the voice of the bad guy.
He's the corpo scumbag.
That's what he does.
Right.
He's a fixer. Faraday is his character's name, and he convinces Kiwi to double cross her team, basically.
Right.
And that ends poorly for him too. So
Oh, it ends. I don't. I mean, it only ends positively for I think one character, and even then, she loses everything
really
to get
positive.
there.
Yeah.
No. It's like you get a really fun character in Rebecca who kind of plays on the lolly trope in anime where people are like, oh, she's your kind of disturbing fetishist object, but not really. That's kind of how she's built. And after her brother dies, there's a great scene in the bar with her brother where he's just running around being a dork, like doing tricks and dancing to music. And then like 3 episodes later after he's dead, she's doing the same thing because she's got like these comically exaggerated robot hands.
Yeah. Pillar was that guy.
Pillar. He's so stupid.
Dirt bag.
So
now
him.
We didn't mention this yet. So if you're still listening to this and you haven't already gone off to watch it and you haven't seen it yet, there is quite a bit of nudity, and there is quite a bit of extreme violence and gore. I mean, it is exactly what you would expect from a hardcore cyberpunk universe that isn't
it's turned up,
toned down. It's turned up.
Yeah,
and I've noticed that this art house they like to draw the details.
Yeah,
Every
it's
piece of the skulls exploding and things like that.
right. Yeah, there's stuff in this like Invincible was this bloody, but not this detailed.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
The Boys was this detailed and this explosive.
Yeah, this is
So
an anime style level of violence and gore, like The Boys, but anime.
right, and this is an interesting teeter-totter act that they're doing because you can go with that hardcore violence and the sexualization. You can do that to a degree and lose the animation. You can lose the story. You can lose everything and make it like The Boys walks that tightrope really, really well, where you could actually stop caring about any of the characters at any time because it gets too extreme, and then they pull you back at the last minute. They have some human moment. This show, Edgerunners, does such a good job of, okay, it's in your face. You just saw like fountains and geysers of blood and viscera and a naked robot person, and you're like, okay, maybe this is too much, and then something incredibly human happens and just pulls you right back in. And it's an interesting juggle because if you don't do it right, and this show hit a lot of people's buttons. Like there's not a lot of people out there going, it was okay. There's a lot of people out there just screaming, ah!
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, even if you're not an anime fan, if you're into cyberpunk stuff, Blade Runner, Judge Dredd, all those things we mentioned earlier, you give this anime a shot because I think you'll like it. 100%.
I think this, and previously this year we had the League of Legends series Arcane.
Arcane, yes.
And this just takes me right back to a feeling I've had for a long time, which is if you've got a video game that you need to adapt, you probably need to do it with animation because, no, this isn't the style of the video game that it's based off of, but it does justice to the video game that it's based off of in a huge way.
Yeah.
The same way that Arcane makes League of Legends look so much cooler than it really is. And
exactly.
and that I'm not knocking League of Legends. It's a great game, but
if you like the MOBAs, then League of Legends is one of the best ones out there. But if you're not into that style of game, you're never going to get into that style of game. It's not one that is you can just go pick up like Halo or something, you know, and maybe enjoy.
The big difference between this and Arcane, though, is I can honestly say, like, my wife ate Arcane up with a just like knife and fork, napkin in her shirt, and asked for seconds. This 10 minutes in, she's like, nope, not for me. So it's just not for the faint of heart. It's beautiful, but in a really ugly kind of way.
Yeah, that's a perfect way of saying it. And I mean, I would agree that I think Arcane was a better, I think it was a better story and things like that. I enjoyed Arcane more, but I really, really liked Arcane. And I really like Cyberpunk Edgerunners. So there's only one really versus two really.
Right. It's like it's an A versus an A plus, right? It's like the difference between a 4-star and a 5-star restaurant.
Yeah.
You had a phenomenal experience. It's a good time to like animation. That's all I have to say.
Right.
So,
and they did such a fantastic job of tying in the video game to the anime. And if you haven't played the video game yet, but you've already watched the anime, give the video game a shot, and you're going to get the same experience I got, but backwards. So I played the game first, and then I'm watching this. And in the first episode, there's 4 or 5 things that make me go, oh my gosh, they pulled that right out of the game, and they did a fantastic job with it.
Location straight from the game.
Yes, the Afterlife dance club and bar, the nightclub, I mean, and several of the parks that they go in, their Osaka building. I mean, it's all there in the Night City that's in Cyberpunk 2077. But then they have other stuff too that you had to catch on to as a viewer if you haven't played the game.
Right.
But if you've played the game, you know exactly what they're talking about when they refer to cyberpsychosis. When they refer to the BDs that David is obsessed with at the beginning of the series, BD stands
I forgot all about those. That was so cool.
BD stands for brain dance.
Yeah.
And the lore behind the brain dances are basically people can have these sensory recorders put into their body, into their minds, their eyes, everything like that. And they can record everything they do, and it can be exported as a virtual reality simulation for other people.
It's like the ultimate reality show.
Exactly.
Right.
And in the world of cyberpunk, and they talk about this more in the game, in the anime, it's almost all like black market under the table BDs.
Right.
They show you in the game more of the legitimate business. I mean, legitimate. I use quotes there.
Because David's buying BDs from the black market of
Exactly.
of cyber psychos going on killing sprees and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh man, he's in a BD. And they're like, hey, that was a great BD. I was like, oh man, they are really just pulling all the stops out and making this so cool for those of you or those of us that have played the game first. So now knowing that, if you've watched this and you liked it, you're going to start the game and you'll be like, I recognize that area. I recognize this. You know, I recognize them calling each other Choom or Gonk. You know, the stuff that they talk about and say, it just intertwines so well.
And what's so mind-boggling about all of that is that all comes from the TTRPG. The role-playing game all the way back to the 80s was coming up with these international words. Like chumbada is like, I think if I'm remembering correctly, it's a West African term for buddy, right? So it's like coming up with all these things. Gonk, these other terms that they're using, they've been using these in the role-playing game for decades, and then the video games are just like, yeah, we'll use those too. And it's like this perfect melange of genres coming together and giving you this little bedtime mint on your pillow. You know,
that's it right there.
So we should talk the big cameo at the end.
Okay, yes, the cameo at the end. The character that is in the game and in the end of the anime, Adam Smasher. And is he in the tabletop RPGs too? Okay.
Sure is.
Yeah, okay, so that's perfect. So that's how you know that that it takes place around the same time as Cyberpunk 2077, because Adam Smasher's there, and he is kind of the exception to the rule as far as cyberpsychosis goes, because he is 97 or 98% machine at this point.
And has been for a long time, because he was active in New York City in 2010. And so, like,
was he really? Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
man, I guess I don't even know then how
So
close
he
this was
was-
to 2077.
Yeah, I was reading up on it. I was crashing through my old RPG stuff, and so he's one of the RPG bosses that you can come across. So like in 2022, you know, our current year, he was a recruit for Arasaka in the Fourth Corporate War. I love that, Corporate Wars.
Corporate wars.
Yeah, in the 2040s he was. So he's just been around. So, but yeah, he's mostly cyborg. If not, I think like his brain is all that's left, right?
Yeah, pretty much it's just his brain is all that's left, and whatever organs you need to keep the brain alive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and the way that he fights David at the end, like I was curious. They had me going a little bit that I thought maybe David was going to pull off a win against Adam Smasher.
But then you remembered you're watching Noir.
Yeah, exactly. It was either going to be he was going to scare him off, he was going to beat him so bad he ran away, or he was actually going to win, and that was going to, because I mean, you know, they can do whatever they want at that point with the characters, but no, like you said, you're in Noir, so everything ends badly for everyone.
But David got his win. I really do
did.
think he got his win, because he had his, even though he had been like literally on the verge of cyberpsychosis for several episodes.
Yeah.
He retained his humanity, and he saved the person that he loved.
Exactly. So you're right. He did still get his win.
But it wasn't the happy ending.
No, not by any stretch of the definition. Yeah.
Even the happy ending was really melancholy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, when she gets up to the moon and you know, she goes and watches the sun come up over the moon, and she sees David in her mind's eye, basically.
Right.
And then he just fades away, and it's like, oh man.
Yeah, it's that
My
perfect
heart.
It's that perfect noir ending. If you've watched a lot of old detective noirs from the 40s and 50s, 30s, they usually the protagonist doesn't survive. Mm-hmm. It's just not a thing. Or if they do, it's bad. Or if you watch what was the latest Guillermo del Toro movie, Nightmare Alley?
Oh
yeah. I'll geek.
Oh man. When I got to the end of that, I was just like, no. Oh no.
Go back and watch the original with Tyrone Power from the 40s. It's just as good. So,
wow.
Yeah, I can't recommend this anymore except for know your genre. Like, don't go into this thinking, oh, Tony and Leigh are nice guys that like fun things, I'm gonna go watch this.
Yeah. No, this is a bummer of a show. There's no doubt about it. But it is a fascinating and just like dark joy to watch this bummer unfold.
Because it's got a color palette that triggers your dopamine receptors. So you're watching, you're like, ooh, I love this. I don't know if I love this. I love this. Oh. And it's like, it's got one of the brightest, curious color palettes out there. And then it's such a bummer. And so it's like, you do come out of it with this depressed high.
Oh yeah. That's perfect. Depressed high. Yes, that's what it is.
You're just like, I'm so happy this is over. I want to go back soon, but I've watched it twice. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So, reserved recommendation, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Know what you're getting into, but if you know what you're getting into, 100% recommend. And then go check out the video game. If you have any interest at all in playing an RPG, a video game RPG in that world, then Cyberpunk 2077 is really, really cool.
And there is a super easy baby mode. I'm not on the super easy baby mode. I decided to challenge myself, but there is a storytelling mode where you can tune down the skill that you need for the game.
Yeah.
Some people just suck at pushing buttons, right? You want to hear the story anyway. So
yeah, for sure. And that game is so big and fascinating that you could even just not play the main quest if you want and just start exploring Night City.
Yeah. Exploring Night City, you can, at one point, I started picking up bounties from cops because cops were talking about things that were going wrong. I was like, oh, well, I wonder if I can do anything. Oh, I can.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Super neat genre, neat stuff. So try not to go down the rabbit hole as quickly and deeply as I have.
Remember, it's a ladder, not a slide.
Moderation? I
think that's the word, yeah.
Damn near killed him. That's what I say.
Hey. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed Edgerunner as well, or anything in the Cyberpunk universe. We just can't get enough of it.
Talk about it in the comments if you want.
Yep. I'm very excited to see the new expansion pack for the game coming out early next year. And maybe, who knows, it would be amazing if we got a season 2, which would obviously be a completely different story with different characters and everything like that. But I would love to see another Trigger anime in this universe.
And you never know, maybe we'll do the role-playing game on Geekshow Tabletop. But first we have to get our
I'm going to have cyberpsychosis so hard in that game.
first session. Ah! Give it all. Ah!
I roll a cyberpsychosis check. Natural 20. I'm a psycho.
I win. Game over.
All right. Thanks, Leigh.
Thanks, Tony.
We'll see you later.
Writing.